What's up, guys? This is Chris Sarai bringing you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of your vehicle. On today's show, we're going to talk about something that we standardly talk about is job loss in the automotive industry. We have a company that is closing that produces EV propulsion systems, and we have another over in Canada closing a plant because of the lack of desire for EVs. And last but not least, we have a story about an incident that happened in my home state where a young man was shot just for honking at a lady. So let's jump straight into it. We're going to, of course, and this was a regular story of mine back when, all of the automotive industry plants were closed and then reopening and closing and reopening. Well, because of the EV industry, we have seen a lot of plants that were basically designed for EV production. And of course, they've been closing and all these other things because there's been a lack of desire for EV vehicles in the market right now. And that's twofold. But our first story we're going to talk about is a Dana Inc., a plant over in Michigan that is deciding that it is going to close its doors. And at first, we're going to look at a video talking about a story we did last week where GM is going to take on a charge of like $1.6 billion because of the lack of desire for EVs and as it pushes back on its desire to make EV vehicles. So let's check that story out, and then I'm going to read you the story about Dana Inc.
Read the earnings release correct, Paul. What, a $1.6 billion charge almost for the EV business? What are your EV plans and why are you scaling things back?
So, if you look at what we've done over the last few years, we were building a lot of capacity because the regulatory environment was pushing us into a world where we were going to have 40 to 50% EVs required by 2030.
See, and that is the key for this whole situation. For the other story about Dana Inc., about the plant that's closing over in Michigan, that's an EV plant, there was so much push, so much how do I want to say this? So much fake desire for EV vehicles originally. And with all of these states stating that they want to have so many EV vehicles on the road by such and such a time, and thinking that people are going to save so much of the environment and all these other things that made EVs really popular and really desirable, well, everybody is starting to find out that EVs do not really save on the cost of a vehicle when it comes to gas. They realize that EVs really don't save the planet like they thought they would. So when everybody pushed us with the desire to have EVs and started to pretty much force stating that, like states like California stating that by, I think the original number was 2029, then they moved it to 2030. And with those states pushing that, they want to have 40 to 50% of EV vehicles on the road by a certain date, that prompted these automakers to jump on that EV production and hit it hard, with the desire thinking that a lot of people are just going to jump into these EVs because at a certain point they're going to be forced to jump into these EVs. And now we know that that's not going to happen, that President Trump doesn't desire that whatsoever. And of course, the market doesn't desire that whatsoever. The people have shown that, EV vehicles are coming out there great, but people have shown that they still have a desire to drive gas-powered vehicles. And the EV market just didn't grow the way they expected it to. Let's keep going.
Clearly, natural demand hasn't gone there. We've seen some increases in that. We're seeing a little bit of an adjustment right now as the consumer realizes that the $7,500 consumer tax credit has gone away. So it's going to take a little while for that to stabilize. But
that's another thing. And then, all the incentives that they were giving out for these EV vehicles, and people still weren't buying them. And that told you a lot. The fact that a majority of the people who buy these EV vehicles are people that are well off, and we understand that the majority of people in the United States are not well off. So that is not a big enough proportion of the market to sustain all of these automakers building all these EVs and putting them on the market. That's why Tesla, Chevrolet, lots of EV companies or automakers that have EV vehicles have tremendous inventory because they're just not selling like they thought they would.
I think it will grow naturally, but it'll be much, much slower going forward. So we've got to go in and fix and right size some of that extra capacity that we think we're going to have for the next 5 years. That'll allow us to be more efficient with our incremental production and grow in relation to where demand is going to be. So the $1.6 billion in the third quarter represents some capacity at Orion, some tooling and some equipment, as well as the CAFE credits, which the president changed earlier this year. So as we look at that and filling that up going forward, we still have a little bit more adjustment to do on total EV capacity, but we think it'll position us to win for the long term.
Are EVs still a viable business longer term?
Yeah, we think for sure they are. When you look at the success that we've had, we've clearly established ourselves as the number 2 producer of EVs in the United States market.
They're good.
And I had a ride in a Cadillac Escalade IQ this morning. It's an amazing
I know, I saw it parked outside the New York Stock
across
Exchange.
the board.
It was great.
So we can help.
It is amazing. That Cadillac Escalade, the electric one, the EV one, it is nice. I mean, it is really nice. The sticker price is kind of crazy, but it is really nice.
Help you get one if you're interested in purchasing one. But it's a vehicle that has all of the range and all the performance capabilities, and I think it is going to be the future. This slower demand is going to give us an opportunity to improve our battery chemistry and our form factors, realizing thousands of dollars per vehicle or savings, and ultimately be in a position to scale up as the consumer does. But we think they're going to win in the end.
All right, so I kind of agree with a lot of what he said. I don't think, and of course, truly what he said is that they should have followed along with their market, and they didn't. They had all of these button pushers or whatever it was that stated to them that the analytics said that we should go all in on EV vehicles, and they didn't really pay attention to what the market was saying and what their customers or the people of the United States could afford, because of course brand new EV vehicles are not going to be the cheapest things on the road. There are definitely some that are decently priced nowadays, but those standardly aren't the U.S. automakers that are making those vehicles. We're talking about the Hyundais of the year of the automakers and stuff like that. But the sticker price for EV vehicles just hasn't hit a point where the average American can truly afford one of these vehicles. Until that happens, we're going to still be in a situation where the majority of the people are going to be buying more used used cars, or buying gas-powered vehicles, because that's what they know and that's what they understand. And a lot of people are not buying EVs because it's new and they just want to stick to what they know. All right, so real quick, we're going to read the story. This is U.S. auto supplier shuts plant on lower EV demand. Okay? All right, so this is from Irina Slav, and this is from Tuesday, October 21st, which was yesterday. An auto supplier that manufactures electrified propulsion systems, among others, has closed a factory in Detroit because of the drop in demand for electric vehicles. In a statement cited by CBS, Dana Inc. said that the closure decision was a result of an unexpected and immediate reduction in customer orders driven by lower demand for electric vehicles, which has rendered continued operations at the plant no longer viable. Some 200 workers at the plant will be laid off. The Dana facility may be the first of many casualties of the change in federal policies toward electric vehicles. Fully supported by the previous administration with billions in subsidies for both buyers and manufacturers, the sector fell out of grace this year with a change of the guard at the White House, with the Trump administration axing the buyer incentive for electric cars as the end of September. The move prompted a rush to buy EVs in the third quarter, leading to a whopping 40.7% jump in EV sales on the second quarter, which saw a dip. By the way, the third quarter sales number also represented a solid 29.6% annual increase. This was the last hurrah, it seems, at least for the time being, as large car makers continue losing money on their EVs and will likely breathe a sigh of relief at the opportunity to let go of their electrification ambitions in the absence of subsidies. Ford lost $1.3 billion on its EVs in the second quarter, and as projected, its total EV-related losses could hit $5.5 billion for the full year. GM and Stellantis are also losing money on every EV they make, even though, per the latest Kelley Blue Book numbers, GM along with Volkswagen enjoyed a more than twofold increase in EV sales in the third quarter. I'm telling you guys, it's just one of those situations where, because they continue, or, it's not I don't have a lot of fans, but the fans that I do have continue to say that I am the EV hater and I hate EVs. And it's not just me. I don't standardly hate EVs. I love the Cadillac Escalade EV. There's a lot of EVs I love. I love the Hyundai Ioniqs. Those are nice. But I understand that we were pushed into a situation with the EVs that we weren't ready for. States, governments, all pushed us into a position where we were thought that it was almost a necessity to buy an EV vehicle. And they tried to incentivize us to do that, and most people stood still, desired not to buy EV, desired not to sell that car they had because they knew what was coming. The inflation the way it is, raising the prices on everything, including cars, gas, electricity. You have to put electricity in EVs, and you're paying for that, right? I mean, what we're talking about is a situation where the government and some states desired, not this government, but the previous institution of the government, decided that they wanted this world to become an EV world. Wanted us to drive mostly EV vehicles. And it was a very admirable idea. You want to save the planet. You want people to save on paying for gas. But in the end, we found out that EV vehicles didn't do either one of those things. EV vehicles still pollute because you have to make the electricity. They still are costly when it comes to filling up with electricity. We understand that to some degree, EV vehicles in the world we live in right now are just financially the same as a gas-powered vehicle. And that was, I think, why they pushed it so hard. But they pushed it way too hard, didn't they? They pushed it way too hard to the point where we have automakers that are losing massive amounts of money, billions of dollars in sales. They didn't expect that. They didn't want that. That was not a desire of theirs to lose all this money. We have 200 people over in Detroit that are going to lose their jobs. They didn't think they'd lose their jobs with all of the things that was being said about EV vehicles and how much people wanted them and how we were going to be forced to drive all of them by 2030. They thought their jobs were safe. And yet here we are, another set of 200 employees at a plant that are looking for work. And it's a sad situation. It's always an extremely sad situation when people lose their jobs. And I hope that they can find another job or they get put in another, location. And I know, what I do know is, and because I truly hate when, people lose jobs, regardless of where it is. But, particularly in the Midwest, because I understand how important these jobs in the Midwest are to people. It's just hard to think about all these people losing their jobs under the guise that the world would become EVs. And most people in the know knew it wouldn't go all the way there just like that quickly, like states like California were pushing for. All right, so let's keep going. All right, next up, we're going to check out another one of these exact same situations, but this is over in Ontario, Canada, and it is a GM plant, which, we could have a whole conversation about that, but this is at a plant over in Ontario, Canada. It is cutting back production because of the lack of desire for EVs. Let's check it out.
It was launched with fanfare just 3 years ago. Now it's the end of the line for GM's Bright Drop electric delivery van.
We just have not seen demand for these vehicles.
GM temporarily closed the assembly plant in Ingersoll, Ontario in May, laying off 1,200 workers. It was supposed to reopen in November. Now the company says sales for commercial EVs have slowed, and it's scrapping production entirely.
This has nothing to do with tariffs or trade. It's simply a demand and a market-driven response.
Still, U.S. President Donald Trump has cut EV subsidies and slapped tariffs on auto, steel, and aluminum imports.
We're in a situation right now.
Union leaders say it's all hitting hard.
The trade war is designed to surgically destroy the Canadian auto industry, and one of the ways it does that is by choking off investment.
With no model to build, there could be ripple effects throughout the auto supply chain. For more than 1,000 GM workers, the future is unclear.
The anxiety, the stress, the not knowing, the are we next? It is very, very challenging out there.
Just last week, Stellantis shifted some production south of the border as it moved to boost its U.S. business by 50%.
If the USMCA isn't renewed or is drastically changed, we may see much of the Canadian auto sector winding down.
For GM, there are also questions about taxpayer money. The federal and provincial governments spent hundreds of millions of dollars to support retooling the Ingersoll plant.
We'll hold them to account for any support we've given them to develop that model.
The company says it's assessing future opportunities, so the closure may not be permanent. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
I pray that it's not permanent, and it's just a horrible situation that we have to understand that the whole concept of EV vehicles and the whole overzealous desire for them to be all over our roads has caused these problems that all of these automakers are going into when it comes to these EV vehicles and not being able to sell these electric vans that looked kind of crazy anyway. And I'm kind of understanding why they're not selling like hotcakes. And it's just one of those things where, people have to understand that you have to ease people into things. You can't just throw things at people. It's my best way of saying that. I think that the EV industry was thrown at us to some degree. I think that, of course, and it's crazy because I was thinking about this the other day, even when the hybrid vehicles started to come out, there was no massive, marketing situation. There was no incentives created. There was no idea that we want to have a certain amount of hybrid vehicles on the road by a certain amount of time. The hybrid vehicles came in real quietly, worked well with gas-powered vehicles, worked well with people who standardly drove gas-powered vehicles, to the point where hybrid vehicles were high sellers. I myself have a hybrid vehicle, and it's one of those things where you put some gas in that thing, it's gonna go. And it's one of those situations where, really and truly, the EV market was just dropped on us so aggressively with the desire for the incentives and stating, how many people or how many EV vehicles they want on their roads by a certain amount of time, which was only a couple years away, which of course, in certain people's minds, put them in a state of fear because they know had gas-powered vehicles, so they start buying EV vehicles. And then, of course, there was the whole EV fatigue situation where, they started saying that they were going to get rid of incentives, so everybody was just rushing out to buy EV vehicles. And it just never worked. It just never worked. And like I always say, you would almost have to create an infrastructure for EV vehicles before you could create all of these necessities or demands or guarantees about EV vehicles. And automakers just didn't take that in consideration. They just listened to the states, listened to everybody talking about EVs, listened to the statements that, hey, these people are going to be truly forced to buy EV vehicles. And the automakers just ran with that, and they ran with it unsuccessfully to the point where loads and loads of them have massive inventory. GM is shutting down a Canadian plant. Now, mind you, I always talk about how I don't understand one of the massive problems that we created when it comes to our automakers were outsourcing the work like that. So I'm not the biggest fan, but that's 1,200 people. I care more about the people. That's 1,200 people that are losing their jobs, that are not going to be able to feed their families, that are going to have to search for new employment right away. And that's just not a good thing. And that's the true problem with this whole situation, created by an overzealousness to get EV vehicles out onto our roads. All right, so last but not least, we're going to talk about a story where this happened over in my home state, as it were. Happened over in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm from Indiana. And it was a young lady that, and the thing is that, first thing is that a young lady decided she was going to act on a young man honking his horn at us, honking his horn at her. And my whole thing is that, you know, how many of us would have died ourselves if we had done this? I know I would have. Let's check it out.
Tonight, this 23-year-old woman is behind bars facing a murder charge after police say road rage led to a deadly shooting that's happening on the city's west side. And thanks for joining us first at 4. I'm Rafael Sanchez.
And I'm Aaliyah Blackburn. It's a story we first brought you as breaking news Friday evening. Fox 59's Jesse Wells explains how police say a traffic dispute turned deadly.
According to court records, the victim was stopped behind the suspect at a red light here on 38th Street. After the light turned green and the suspect didn't move, the victim honked his horn. Prosecutors believe that honk enraged the suspect, who fired one shot into the victim's car. A single bullet hole.
How many of you have done that? Raise your hand if you've done that. Everybody who just raised their hand could have possibly been shot for honking their horn. And I consider it a pretty common thing. I mean, in truth, I think that when you honk your horn, or me personally, just I guess so I could validate me doing it, I consider myself honking my horn helping you, because obviously you're sitting there on your phone or just not paying attention or something, and I'm helping you realize that the light has changed colors.
Shattered the back window of this car and claimed the life of 21-year-old Kentrell Settles.
He's loved by so many people, and there's so many people that's gonna.
I know him. Oh man. Let's keep going.
Miss him, and such a precious life was taken for no reason.
Police were called around 2 p.m. Friday to a neighborhood near 38th and Georgetown and found the victim bleeding in the driver's seat. The young man died shortly after being rushed to the hospital.
He didn't do anything wrong, and for it to still happen, I mean, it troubles you.
It's beyond senseless. The victim in this case.
Man, I know Kenny used to hang out with us down at IU. Oh, that's messed up, man. That's crazy to see somebody that you haven't seen in probably 19, 20 years and see that his son got shot for honking his horn at a lady. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Honks his horn and he ends up losing his life.
This affidavit claims 23-year-old Deborah Benefiel got mad that the victim honked his horn, so she followed him and fired a shot into his car.
The allegation is she couldn't keep her cool at a traffic light.
This is just sad and disappointing that we're seeing this in our society and our culture, where people think it's okay to pick up a firearm and take an action like this and taking one's life.
IMPD officers quickly used license plate readers to track down the suspect's SUV, leading to her arrest for murder and criminal recklessness just a few hours after the shooting.
I'm a huge believer in the license plate readers. It has been a game changer.
Both police and prosecutors hope the case sends a simple message to drivers everywhere.
We have to be patient. We have to be calm.
So it's just a good reminder to everybody to not only keep your cool on the road, and if someone honks their horn, it's not the end of the world, and it should not ever result in gun violence, but those are the allegations here.
After being arrested, the suspect refused to talk to police. She was identified as the shooter by the victim's girlfriend, who was in the car when the shooting took place. Finally, before the shooting, the suspect did not have any criminal history. She's now being held without bond pending trial. Jesse Wells, Fox 59 News.
Jesse, thank you. On Indy's northeast.
Tonight.
Damn. All right. Wow. My condolences to Murph and his family. That's small world, guys. Truly a small world we live in. And what are we talking about, guys? What are we talking about? This is literally, First thing I'm gonna say is that we have to realize to some degree that this is not just all people of color. Is the best way to say it. I mean, this young lady was not a person of color. She looks Spanish, but of course that truly doesn't matter. And it's just one of those things. It's just I just don't understand, because when did we turn into a world where something as simple as that? Because my whole thing is that it's hard for me to believe that there's a person in the world who has not done that. You know what I mean? This is one of them things where, if you're sitting behind somebody and the light turns, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And in most cases, I won't honk. You know what I mean? I'll just be chilling or whatever. I'll give it a couple minutes. If I think it's going to reach, I'll only honk. I will say this. I will only honk when I think that the light is about to turn from green to yellow. I'm honking. I'm honking me. And I think that a lot of people, do this. I mean, I think that a lot of people do this. But who in their right mind would think they would lose their life because they've done this? That is so outrageous to think that somebody would kill somebody because of this. I mean, I don't know. It baffles the mind that we've reached a point in the world where, just no respect for life is what I want to say. That young lady could not have any respect for life. Just have no. I don't even know what to say. It's just one of them situations where you are literally, there's got to be some of the stupidest stuff. The dude honked at you. He was helping you. That is my whole thing. Honking at a person that's sitting at a light that's not paying attention is helping them. But nobody sees that. Somebody would see this as an offense. And don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's lots of people that see this as an offense, and a lot of people that have gotten into fights or road rage incidents. But how many people have really lost their lives because they honked their horn at somebody? It's truly outrageous that we live in a world where people would truly decide that they're going to shoot you because you honked your horn at them. And truly, it's crazy to me that this happened in Indianapolis. But of course, we have crazy people everywhere. It's not just any particular place. We find crazies everywhere, and this lady has to be crazy because that young lady looked like she was fairly young. Dollars to donuts, I bet she got multiple children, and now they ain't got no moms. And my friend Murph lost his son. All right, guys, I'm going to let y'all go and get up out of here. I am Chris Surratt. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Car Concierge Show. Please hit the like, share, subscribe buttons, and I'm out. Peace.